What's up everyone? Welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. So in today's lesson, we are going to talk about the cookie management using the deal package. I will assume you already watched out my previous lesson, talk about the interceptors, because today's lesson we're going to need some knowledge from the previous lesson. If you haven't checked out that one, feel free to check out that first. If you don't know what's cookie and session, it's okay because I will give you a brief knowledge about how cookie session works, and also we will manually create a cookie management using the interceptors, and then we could using the third-party library that already implement these cookie management for us. I will talk about that one as well. If you are new to my channel, feel free to reach out to my channel page and you will find a bunch of Flutter tutorial. Talk about the Flutter GetX, Flutter UI, Flutter Network, Flutter widget, and Dart programming language tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum out my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. We will also talk about how to manage the user state in the Flutter. As you see, I create this basic login screen. When the user log in, next time when the app launch, the user don't need to sign in again because we manually manage the user state in our application. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. We will start from some basic network knowledge. As you see from this diagram, the HTTP protocol is stateless. So every time the client sends a request to the server will give response, but the server will not going to remember who sent this request if we are not going to using some extra method. In order to remember the user state, we introduce this cookie and session method. So first the client will send to the request and the server receive the request. At the same time, the server will create a session for that user, contain the session ID and also the expire time for that session, and will send a response append a session ID into the cookie and send the cookie back to the client. So the next time the client will send request, the browser will automatically append the cookie. So the client doesn't need to probably like log in again, and the server will find the client's information using the same session ID if it is not expired. There are several advantages and disadvantages. For advantage, the server will manage the user state, so the client doesn't need to log in again during the valid session period. For the disadvantage, in the client side, the cookie cannot append large amount of data to the server. So in the server side, every time when the new client comes in, the server going to create a new session ID for that client. You will waste a lot of resources when there are a large amount of client trying to access your server. You're probably going to do a load balance during that situation. So you're going to share the session among different server clusters. There are another approach to solve this kind of problem. We're using the JWT token. If you guys interested in the JWT, I can create another video talk about that. In this tutorial, we only focus on cookie and session approach. So let's open our Visual Studio Code. Here I create very simple NodeJS backend using this express. The backend will create a valid session if the user enter the right credential. For texting purpose, we only make this session valid 30 seconds. When the app trying to access the home route, we first will check the user session. If user session exists, we will send a welcome message. Otherwise, we will send this for1 status code indicate the user is unauthorized, and then going to redirect user to the login screen. So in the login screen, if your user enter the correct credential, we're going to create a session for the user. And when the user trying to log out, we're going to destroy the user session. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Very simple. And we're going to use it to test our Flutter application. So let's look at the front end. In the front end, as you see, we have these login screen.dar I wrote before today's lesson, and it's very basic login screen, only contains those two text fields and one login button. When the app launch, so first we're going to send a request to this backend server to check if the user have valid section. If the user have valid section, we will using this navigator push. We're going to push the home route into our application. Otherwise, we just show the error message with our status code. Also, when the user press this login button, we actually will make a post request to the backend server, append our username and the password. If the response static code equals to 100, we're going to navigate to logout screen. Yeah, it's pretty simple in this login screen. When you press this login button, behind the scene is we using the cookie manager. As you see, I create this cookie manager class that extends the interceptors. So first, we're using this Singleton approach to create our cookie manager, and then we override its own response method. We're going to save our cookie if the status code equals to 100, and also we're going to clear our cookie if the response code equals to 41. And in the request, we're going to append our cookie to these HTTP requests, so the server knows our valid session by checking these information inside our cookie. Right? It's pretty straightforward, and we can talk more about the singleton. So actually, I wrote the sample code to talk about the singleton. In the singleton, we only create one instance among all the application. And as you see, there are two approaches to create a singleton, but the common is we make the constructor private. So in the Dart, we have this factory keyword, and when you create instance, so you will return these static variable. The static variable will call these internal private constructor. So whenever what you create, how many objects you create, they always refer to the single one. So let's run this code, and you're going to see the console will print out the true, because those two instances are the same. We're using this equal. We will compare the two objects the same. This is our first approach. We're using this factory keyword. So let's combine it out. And another one is we're going to using this get keyword. In the second approach, we could access to this instant variable using a class name, because we make it a static. So let's run the code, and you will see the result is also the true. No matter how many instance you create, they all refer to the same one. By using the singleton design pattern, we can make sure every time we're using the same cookie manager. Since we extend the interceptor as what we talked in our last lesson, we're going to using deal.interceptor.add. We're going to add this cookie manager. So that's back to this login screen. So in line 31, as you see, using deal client.deal.interceptors, and I add our cookie manager instance. So by adding this line of code, our cookie manager will intercept the response and as well as the request. On the request, the interceptor will append the cookie if we have cookie. On the response, the interceptor will save the cookie if we have cookie. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. And there are 3 actual methods inside this cookie manager. So the first one is initialize the cookie. We're going to use the share preferences to store the cookie we obtain from the server. And we have 2 methods. One is save the cookie and another one is clear the cookie. So the save cookie just save the cookie to the share preferences, and the clear cookie is clear the cookie in our share preferences. And we will call this initialize the cookie method in our main.dar. And as you see this line 10 inside our main method. So first I call this widget flutter binding.initialized method. After that I can call this initialize the cookie. If you want to put this line of code before the run app, you're going to call this initialize the method. Otherwise, you can put this initial cookie after your run app, as I shown here. We could something like this. If you put after this run app, you do not need to initialize the widget binding. Okay, so either way is fine. Let's save the code. Let's go over through the workflow again. So first we initialize the cookie. This line of code will call our cookie manager. We'll first check if we have the cookie string inside our share preferences. If it does, we're going to assign the cookie to this cookie variable. And then in our login screen, we add these interceptors with our cookie manager. So we will intercept the request as you see here, and we will append the cookie to our header. So that means if we have a valid user session, we don't need to log in again. Okay, so let's test it in our Flutter app. And as you see in the server, we have very simple username and password. So first I'm going to enter the wrong password. So when I press this login, you will see the console will send it back. It says sorry, the wrong password or the user not found. And also I print out the currently cookie. So this cookie is I used, I think it's yesterday when I trying to test the app. So I'm going to make the new one. So let's enter this correct, the username and then the password. Let's clear the console. So when I log in again, you will direct us to the login page. And I can refresh this application within the valid session period, which is 30 seconds. So every time I click this rerun button, I don't need to log in again because the application already keep our user state in the share preferences. So next time I send a request to the server, you will append our cookie. The cookie contains our session ID. If the session is in a valid period, we don't need to log in again. And as I said, I set the session valid 30 seconds. So we could try after 30 seconds. Let's try to refresh again. Yeah, as you see, after the session expired, we will clear our session in the server side. So next time when I refresh this restart button, the app will need us to enter our login credential. Okay, I hope you get the basic knowledge about how to manage the cookie session using Flutter DO package. And that's about the manual create these cookie manager by our own. So in the pub there, you can find a package called deal cookie manager. This third-party library already implemented this cookie manager for you. So we could back to our VS Code, and we're going to import first the cookie jar, and then we need to import this path provider, and the third one is this deal cookie manager. So we're going to import those three libraries in order to use the cookie manager implemented by the third-party library. So first we're going to implement those three, and then we can close this pub.yaml file, and let's back to our login screen. So first I'm going to comment it out my own cookie manager instance, right? So I'm going to comment it out, and I comment the code I wrote before. Okay, so this is we using the cookie management by the third-party library. So I'm going to comment now my own cookie manager and open the others one. Okay, so open this method also. Cookie manager, sorry, should be cookie manager. Okay, sorry, should be here. Okay, let's save the code and let's look into this code. So first, we need to specify where we're going to store our cookie. So we're using this path provider. We will get our document path, and then we call this persistent cookie jar to specify where we're going to store our cookie. Using this file storage, we append our document path. And last is we're using this cookie manager provided by the deal cookie manager, and we append our persistent cookie. That's it. So we only need to wrote these 3 lines of code, and we don't need to implement our own cookie manager. And also in our main.r, we're going to comment out those lines of code as well, because this line of code we only need because we implement our own cookie manager, since we're using the third-party one, and we don't need those lines of code as well. And let's back to this login screen. Yeah, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Just put these 3 lines of code in your initial state. That's it. Let's try to test it. So let's restart our application. And first you see we got this status code 401, means we are no authorized. And then going to type our username and a password. Okay, let's try to log in. Yeah, we are able to log into our home page. And now I press this restart button. I will show next time we don't need to log in again, because it probably the same as we manually manage our own cookie. Okay, so we only need to log in when the session is expired. So we probably need to wait 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, we need to manually type the user credential again. Okay, so let's try it again. Okay, still valid. We can check our the backend. We assign a new session ID and to the client side. So the next time the client will append the session ID in the cookie and send back to the server. Okay, try it again. So since session expired, so we need to manually type the login credential again. Okay, that's all for today's lesson. We talk about the basic knowledge for HTTP, stateless, and also how to manage the user state using cookie and session approach. And then we talk about how to manually create our own cookie manager using the interceptors provided by the deal package. So we could save the cookie and append cookie by using these shared preferences. And the last, we talk about how to incorporate with the third-party library which is deal cookie manager, to achieve the same result. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum up my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, thanks for watching. I will see you in next one.